Ողջույն, Factor TV-ում այսօր պատիվ ունենք հյուրընկալելու Հայաստանի Հանրապետությունում եվրոպական պատվիրակության ղեկավար դեսպան Անդրեա Վիկտորինին։ Բարև ձեզ Տիկին Վիկտորին, շնորհակալություն այս հնարավորության համար, այս հարցազրույցի համար, որը ինչ-որ իմաստով նաև ամփոփելու է ձեր գործունեությունը Հայաստանի Հանրապետությունում։
Mrs. Victorine, you were appointed EU ambassador to Armenia in September 2019, when people had great hopes and expectations. When there was no war of 2020, no coronavirus, and no internal political crisis in Armenia. When you came to Armenia, did you imagine what kind of difficult work awaits you?
No, naturally not. I was thrilled and happy that I come back to Armenia. Naturally, I had followed the Velvet Revolution from far, and I was more concentrating what we can do together really to improve the situation in the country, to support democracy, rule of law, human rights. I saw all the opportunities, and just when I arrived, I saw this absolutely positive atmosphere, and I felt the change while walking simply through Yerevan. I had at least half a year, which was relaxed, and where we really went on this positive track before we then ended up in the COVID pandemic. And I will never forget this, because this was the spirit of this country moving into a new direction, and then all the challenges came, and that is part of the job. You have to cope with what you get, and you try to improve, nevertheless, the situation for the country.
Since your diplomatic appointments term in Armenia is close to ending, please let's talk about results. Would you please to sum up what results were achieved during this period of the partnership with the European Union?
Well, I think although these were extremely challenging times, we extended and deepened the partnership between Armenia and the European Union. The implementation of the SEPA agreement plays a very important role in this. We are proud in the European Union that, let's say, the SEPA agreement was the blueprint for the Armenian reform process. I think together we could do a lot in order to support this reform process, which is really changing the whole environment here in Armenia, starting, let's say, from what we do in the field of environment, then all the reform process like justice reform, anti-corruption, police reform, and now also the field of education are common areas of cooperation and are successful. And also, let's say, cooperation in the field of economy, of trade, are very important. And for me, which was really an important part of our cooperation, was cooperation with civil society, support of independent media like Factor TV. We have this wonderful project together, and I think this is all contributing to change the landscape here in Armenia.
During your term as ambassador, from March 2021, the Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement signed between Armenia and the European Union entered into full force. What are the important records that you can make regarding Armenia as a partner of the European Union?
First of all, we started implementation directly after the signature in 2017, but the full entry into force opened new avenues and new areas of cooperation. It is a deepened cooperation in all areas of the agreement. As I said, there are new elements which really then became implemented, like our cooperation in the field of education, but also, let's say, the political dialogue intensified in this period. And one element is naturally that we have a whole network of dialogues, of meetings on different topics. It starts with let's say, the justice sector. It goes on if we have the trade subcommittee, we have a customs subcommittee. This means we are meeting regularly, sometimes in the past under difficult conditions, because during the COVID time it was all via video conference. And we are happy to go back to the real meetings where we sit together and discuss all areas of our cooperation.
I'm sure that Armenia's citizens are interested in visa liberation. When will we be able to travel through Europe without obstacles?
This is quite a process, and I'm sure everybody is aware of it. We have first of all to start the visa dialogue. And this is a decision that has to be taken by 27 member states. So I'm convinced and hopeful that this will come soon, because this is the first step we have to go. But I'm in contact with my colleagues from the EU member states, because let's say for the question of visa applications, it's the responsibility of the member states. And I think all embassies here are interested to improve the procedures and to overcome the problems we are facing right now.
Wonderful. Let's wait for results. Armenia-EU cooperation is based on common values, but the financial aspect is also important. The Prime Minister of Armenia recently referred to the support package of 2.6 billion euros from the EU within the framework of Eastern Partnership Program. We would like that process to go a little faster, said Nikol Pashinyan. What are the areas Armenia presented programs for that were approved by the EU?
Let me start at the beginning again. It is called Economic and Investment Plan. Investment. So it is a projection of a new form of cooperation which has several elements. You have grants from the European Union, you have loans from the European banks, you have all sorts of new instruments like blending, guarantees, and then as a new element there should be private investment. That's the idea. And I remember that President Michel said when we had the visit in 21 and announced the plan, let's say the fate is in your hands because you have to present bankable projects. And I would go away from this figure and really look into the results. And we have positive results. We have set up in this period quite a system of support for middle and small and middle-sized companies, from advice, but also offering them loan schemes. We have tangible, practical results driving through Yerevan in form of the green buses. And this is a very good example how things are developing. I remember this was one of the first contracts that was signed end of 21. But let's say the devil is always in the details. There were certain questions to be discussed between the Ministry of Finance and the municipality of Yerevan. And when this was fixed, we could continue with the procurement. But we are all very proud that we now have these green buses. We proceed, and also this is linked to the economic and investment plan with our assistance in the south, in Syunik. We will build 2 co-op centers in Syunik. I think this is a very important contribution. And the loans are also coming within the economic and investment plan. We will continue, and this is now a second phase, also to uplift kindergartens and polyclinics according to energy efficiency measures, but we always have also the element of earthquake safety, which is also financed within the economic and investment plan. And I think we have still potential in the field of tech, of digitalization. There we are thinking over, and we wait also for Armenian proposals. But if you look at the glass half full or half empty, I am convinced that we were fast and we started really to deliver. And it is a common endeavor. I have not a suitcase of money under my desk.
Recently, EU announced about doubling of funds for the project implemented in Syunik province. You announced that within the framework of the Resilient Syunik Team Europe initiative, the budget of the 5-year project will amount to 116 million euros, of which 40 million will be grants and 75 million will be loan funds. I have a very warm spot in my heart for Syunik, especially in the last 2 years, when times are very hard for Syunik, you said. And indeed, we saw you in Syunik in problematic and insecure times when the region was subjected to a military attack by Azerbaijan. What is the reason of the special attitude of the EU towards Syunik? Apart from what you have listed, will we see other results?
Also, I hope the people of Syunik will see concrete results. It is a mix. It is the European Union with grants together with the European banks, and up to now 10 member states plus Switzerland, which is our EU plus. And we joined efforts. I think this is the common understanding that Syunik after the war had special challenges. It is a question also to really work concretely for the benefit of the people. So we will address, again, economic development. We want to support small and medium-sized enterprises. There is an element of agriculture in it, which is important for Syunik. But also, I mentioned the 2 co-op centers. We will also, we are participating to build a 2 more center in Kapan, in a wonderful location, the old railway station. There will be engagement in the field of social protection, support for vulnerable groups, but also taking, let's say, the example of other programs in the field of tourism, for example, and cooperation with civil society.
We smoothly approached the topic of security. The Prime Minister of Armenia recently announced that the image of European Union has significantly improved after the Union decided to send an observation mission to Armenia. It made the people understand that the European Union cares about Armenia's security. Pashinyan said, we know that deployment of European Union observations was not easy. Great efforts were required. What is impartial expectation that Armenia's citizens should have from EU observers?
I would say it's good to have a realistic expectation. The objective of the mission is, first of all, to patrol along the international border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This, let's say, the findings of these patrols are reported back to Brussels and from there spread to member states. But I think it has a very important psychological element for the people living along the border. They have the feeling there is somebody there who sees what is happening and who also talks to them. And there is another very important element, what we call human security. Means there are also visits in the villages next to the border to talk to the people, to hear their concerns, their needs, to see how their lives are affected by the security situation. I think this is giving hope, but on the other hand also reporting back to Brussels a very important element. And our hope is, or also if you want an objective, that let's say the work of the EU mission in Armenia will contribute to confidence building and thus helping to find a peaceful, sustainable solution here in the region.
We often hear harsh assessments of EU observers from Azerbaijan and Russia, and fake news is quite common in this region. Sometimes some figures announce that EU observers enter people's house, find out if Azerbaijanis lived in those houses, enter people's houses, find out if Azerbaijanis lived in those houses, and transfer this information to Azerbaijan. What can you say about this? And is it planned to expand the European Union observation mission in Armenia?
On the fake news or misinformation, yes, we face it. I think it is always, it can happen if not everybody is happy with the decision of the European Union. Naturally, this is not true. We have a clear mandate, which means to observe and monitor along the border. No, they are not going into houses. This was a really interesting comment, and I got several press questions, and I was even told that we are working for the British, so this was also interesting. And it is very clear the reports of the mission go to headquarters in Brussels and to the member states, not to third countries. And again, we are open, we are transparent, you can read the mandate, so there are no secret things in it. Right now we are still in a phase of really building up the mission, and we hope that this is finished by early autumn, and then also the 3 new operational bases will be active, and then we will see further.
Madam Ambassador, Armenians, our compatriots, live in Nagorno-Karabakh, and in Armenia we are extremely sensitive about their fate. This issue is sometimes considered as a territorial dispute. Who owns the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh? But little is said about the people. The security risks to the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh from Azerbaijan are too great. How does the European Union see its role of resolving the conflict as well as in ensuring the security environment?
I think the European Union has been closely following the developments in and around Nagorno-Karabakh during, after the war, and now in the latest time. In particular, I think we pay great attention to the consequences of the restrictions of the blockade of the Lachin corridor and the non-resumption of hostilities and the need to guarantee the rights and the security of the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh are crucial objectives, and they are mentioned as there are several statements by President Michel underlining this. So it is necessary that the rights and the security of the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh is addressed. And since then, I think in the wordings both by President Aliyev, but also by Prime Minister Pashinyan, this was said in several speeches. Now, speeches are one thing, statements are another thing. This is not enough, yeah? I think we believe that we need a direct track of communication between Baku and Stepanakert to address all open issues. It is not as neither speeches nor statements are enough. It needs a second track of direct communication. And I think there was mentioned several times that the international community will support this. And the European Union, and I quote again President Michel, also reiterated several times that it is important to develop a positive agenda. So this means opening of the Lachin corridor. We need predictability and transparency of the crossing procedures, the resumption of essential energy and communication services, and we also need to avoid new tensions and violence. And I'm convinced these questions will be discussed at the next trilateral meeting in Brussels.
As a female ambassador, you show by your example and activity the importance of great involvement of women in interstate and international relations, in diplomacy. What is your assessment of women's involvement and role of public and state affairs in Armenia, and what needs to be done?
I think you have very talented women here, and I see positive examples of women leaders. However, there is still space for improvement. I think it is really necessary to understand that you cannot leave out 50% of the population. So you have to create opportunities. This starts with job opportunities, but it also means legal frameworks that women have the possibility to follow a professional career and in the same time have a private life. And empowerment of women is a constant process, you see. We try to support this via several projects, and I'm happy that many member states join us in this effort. And I think, for example, women are good negotiators. I would love to see more women in, let's say, the negotiations to end the conflict, to come to a peaceful solution. We are very proud that we have a close cooperation with the human rights defender here, and I think we share the same objectives. There is still, and it is not only in Armenia, a problem of domestic violence. That's why I repeat, I think the ratification of the Istanbul Convention is really needed.
Armenia's democracy is very young, unlike of many EU countries. Taking advantage of the fact of defeat in the war, some circles began to spread narrative opposing security to democracy, as if democracy was the cause of the defeat. In your opinion, is democracy reversible in Armenia? And are there no internal threats, as the Armenian Prime Minister recently announced?
I am deeply convinced that democracy, or the development of democracy, rule of law and human rights ensures security. This is the European perspectives. That's what we learned after the Second World War. Armenia made quite some progress, both in the field of the reform processes, but also in supporting independent institutions. But naturally, let's say again, the implementation is the most important part. There are some shortcomings, but we just had the partnership committee, and let's say the engagement of Armenia was really welcomed in this forum to say we see progress. Still in one or two elements, I think there are changes needed, especially, for example, in the recruitment of candidates. You need clear and transparent procedures that are acceptable for also the public. Yeah? But security will only be possible if really human rights also play a role. For example, in the armed forces, the treatment of female service persons that are coming now. So you need democracy, you need rule of law, and you need also civilian control on law enforcement agencies and the armed forces in order to develop this further.
Unfortunately, your mission in Armenia is ending. Ambassadors usually send a message to the citizens of given country, to the citizens of the given country. When you leave, what will you take with you, and what do you have to say to Armenians?
I take with me a lot of memories of touching, positive, sometimes difficult moments. I'm grateful that I could meet so many talented and engaged persons. Many of them became friends for me. I take with me the wonderful landscape, the potential you have. I just saw your positive result on tourism, so I'm convinced after COVID we are back to really the development of tourism in Armenia. But I also take naturally many emotional moments also, because when you live in this country in these difficult times, you feel with Armenians. I wish Armenia and the Armenians to really develop a positive vision. You have a lot of potential, and you should use it in a positive way to have hope for the future. The EU stands ready to facilitate a peaceful solution for the region, and I would love to see that Armenians get optimistic again and be confident that you are able to develop the future of your country. And I will come and visit and look how it works.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for being guest on Factor TV and sharing your impressions and assessments with our viewers.
Thank you so much.
Արգել է հեռուստադիտողներ Factor TV-ում հյուրընկալել ենք Հայաստանի Հանրապետությունում Եվրոպական միության պատվիրակության ղեկավար դեսպան Անդրեա Վիկտորինին։